Hello guys, welcome to Ashutosh Coaching Center. Oh, Then hello guys, welcome to Ashutosh Coaching Center. Now the chapter name is Organism and Population and chapter is 13. Okay, let's start here now. Our living world is fascinatingly diverse and amazingly complex, and we can try to understand its complexity by the investigation process at various levels of biological organization and micromolecules, cell, tissue, organs, individuals, organism, population, community, ecosystem, and biomes. At any level of biological organization, we can ask two type of questions. For example, when we hear the bulbul singing early morning in the garden, we may ask how does the bird sing, or why does bird sing. The how type of questions seek the mechanism behind the process, while why type questions seek the significance of the process. For the first six questions in our example, the answer might be in the terms of operation of the voice box and the vibrating box in the birds, okay, bone in the birds. Whereas of for the second question, the answer many lie in the birds needs to the communicate with mate during breeding season. When you observe nature around you with a scientific frame of mind, you will certain come up with many interesting questions of both types. Why are night blowing flowers generally white? How does the bee know which flower has nectar? Why does cactus have so many thorns? How does the chick's spurs recognize her own mother? And so on. Okay, now let's come to, you have already learned in previous classes that ecological is a subject which has studied with the interaction among the organism between the organism and its physical abiotic environment. Ecological is basically concerned with four level of biological organization, that is organism, population, community, and biomes. In this chapter, we explored ecology at the organic and population level. 13.1, Organism and its environment. Ecology at the organic level is essential for physiologic ecology, which try to understand how the different organisms are adapted to their environment in the term of not only survival but also reproduction. You may have learned in earlier classes how the rotation of our planets around the sun until the axis cause annual variation and in the intensity and the duration of temperature and the resulting in distinct season. This variation together with annual variation in precipitation, remember the precipitation include both rain and snow, account the formation of major biomes as such as desert, rainforest, and tundra. 13.1 figure. Okay, these are the figure mean annual precipitation figure. You can watch this and study clear and clear your doubt. Okay, now biome distribution with the respect to annual temperature and precipitation. This is 13.1 figure that was shown in this, and this is very important on the point of view on the needs. Okay, it's a very point of views are very necessary for the examination. Okay, point of view. Regional and the local variation within each biomes lead to formation of a wide variety of habitat. Major biomes of India are shown in figure 13.2. On the planet Earth, life exists not just in a few favorable habitat but even in extreme and harsh habitat. Scoring Rajasthan desert and rain-soaked Meghalaya forest, deep ocean trenches, and torrential stream, and the permafrost, snow-laden polar regions, high mountain tops, thermal spring, and stinking compost tips, to name a few. Even our intestine is a unique habitat for hundreds of species of microbes. This was figure A, B, C, D. This all was important. Let's check. Major four big biomes in India. First is tropical rainforest, second is deciduous forest, desert, and seas. This is also very important, so we should screenshot now. it's done. What are the key elements that lead to so much variation in the physical and the chemical condition of different habitat? The most important ones are temperature, water, light, and soil. We must remember the psychochemical abiotic component alone do not characterize the habitat of an organism completely. The habitat include biotic component, also pathogens, parasites, predators, and the competitions of competitors of organism which they are interact constantly. We assume over a period of time and the organism had through natural selection evolved adaptation to optimize its survival and reproduction and its habitat. Each organism has an invariably defined the range of condition that it can tolerate and the diversity in the resources it utilizes and distinct functional role in the ecological system. All these together comprise its Nike 13.1.1 major biotic factor. Temperature is the most important ecological relevant environmental factor. You are aware that the average temperature on earth land varies seasonally, decreases progressively from the equator towards the pole and from the plains to the mountain tops. It ranges from the sub-zero level in the polar areas and high altitude less than 50 degree in the tropical desert in summer. There are, however, unique habitats such as thermal springs and deep sea hydrothermal vents where average temperature exceed 100 degrees Celsius. It is general knowledge that mango trees do not cannot grow. Okay, do not grow and cannot do not what are they? Mango trees do not and cannot grow. Okay, huh. In what? So in temperature like Canada and Germany. Okay, the mango cannot grow like this, matlab cannot grow in this like city, no sorry, country, that is Canada and Germany. Snow leopard are not found in Kerala forest and tuna fish are rarely couch beyond tropical latitude in the ocean. You can appreciate the significant temperature to living organisms when you realize that it affects the kinetic enzymes and through in the metabolic activity and the other physiologically function of the organism. A few organisms can tolerate and thrive in the wide range of temperature and they are called Eurothermal. Eurythermal. What is eurythermal? Eurythermal, you understand here. But a vast majority them are restricted to a narrow range of temperature. Such are called stenothermal. Okay, stenothermal. The level of tolerance of different determined to a large extent their geological distribution. Can you think of few eurothermal and stenothermal animal and plants? Let's. In recent years, there has been a growing concern about the gradually increasing average global temperatures. Chapter 16 in chapter 16. Okay, and if the trends continue, would you expect the distributional range of some species to be affected? Water is another the most important factor influencing the life of organism. In fact, the life on the earth originated in water and is sustainable without water. If availability is so limited in desert that only a special adaptation make possible for organism live there. The productivity and the distribution of plants is also heavily depend on water. You might think that organism living in oceans, lakes, rivers and should not face any water related problem, but it's not true. For aquatic organism, quality and the composition of pH and the pH becomes important and the salt concentration measured as salinity in the parts per thousand and is less than 5 inland waters, 30 to 35 in the sea and less than 100 in some hypersaline hypersaline lagoons, and some organisms are tolerant of a wide range of salinite and the euryhaline, but others are restricted to narrow range stenohaline. Okay, stenohaline, and the many freshwater animals cannot live for long sea water, and the vice versa because of osmotic problems they would face. And light, since the plant produce food through photosynthesis, a process which is likely possible when sunlight is available as a source of energy, we can quickly understand the importance of the light for the living organism, particularly autotrophs. Many species of small plants, herbs, shrubs, and the growing in the forest are adapted to the photosynthesis optimally under a low light condition because they are constantly overshadowed by the tall canopy tree. Many plants are also depend on the sunlight meet their photoperiodic requirement for the flowering. For many animals too, light is important in they use diurnal and seasonal variation in light intensity and the duration photo period as cues for tuning their foraging, produce and migrating activities. The availability of light on land and is closely linked with the with that of temperature, since sun is the source of both, but less than 500 meters in the ocean. The environmental is dark, and inhabitants are not aware for the existence of celestial source of energy called sun. And what then it is their source of energy, and the spectral lines, spectral quality of solar radiation is also important for life, but the UV component of the spectrum is harmful to the many organisms, while not all colors components of visible or spectrum are the available for the marine plant living at the different depth of the ocean. Among the red and the green and the brown algae that inhabits the sea, which is likely to be found in the deepest water. And why? So what is soil? The nature and the property of soil in the different places vary and is the dependent on the climate, the weathering process, the weather soil is transported or the sedimentary, and the how soil is developed occur. The various characteristics of the soil as a soil composition and the gain size and the aggregation determine the percolation and the water holding the capacity of the soil. These characters along the parameters such as pH, minerals composition, and the topography determine to a large extent the vegetation in the any area. This is turned that dictates the type of animals and can support it the similarly in the aquatic environment. The sediment characteristic often determine the type of beneath animals that can thrive here there. 13.1.2 Response to abiotic factor. Having realized that the abiotic condition may habitat vary drastically in time, we know the ask how to do organism living in such habitats copes and manage with stressful condition. But their attempting to the answer this question, we would perhaps ask why a highly variable and external environment should bother organisms after all. One would accept that during the course of million years of their existence, and the many species would have evolved relatively constant and internal within the body. Extra environmental that permit all the biomolecules reaction and the physiological function to the produce with maximum efficiency, and thus enhance the overall fitness of the species. And this constantly, for example, could be in the term of optimum temperature and osmotic concentration of body fluid. Ideally then, and the organism should try to maintain constancy of internal environment, a process called homeostasis, despite variation external environmental conditions that tend and to upset homeostasis. Let us analogy to classify this important concept. Suppose a person is of able to perform his her best when the temperature is 25 degrees Celsius and the wishes to maintain, and it is so even it is strongly sorry scorchingly hot or freezing cold outside, it could be achieved at home in the car while traveling at a place by using an air condition is in the summer and the heating in winter. Then his or her performance would be always maximal regardless of the weather around him and her the here the person's homeostatic is accomplished and not physiological but artificial mean. How do you other living organism cope with the situation? Let us look at the various possibilities. Now regulate. Some organisms are able to maintain homeostatic physiological some active sometimes behavior also means it ensure the constant body temperature and the constant osmotic concentration, etc. All birds and mammals and the very few lower vertebrate and invertebrate species are indeed capable of such regulation. Thermoregulation and the osmoregulation. Evolutionary biologists believe that the success of mammal is largely due to their ability to maintain a constant body temperature and thrive whether they are live in Antarctica or in the Sahara Desert. The mechanism used by the mammals to regulate their body temperature are similar to ones and that we humans use, and we maintain a constant body temperature of 37 degrees Celsius in winter. We outside temperature is more than when outside temperature is more than our body, we sweat profusely and resulting evaporate cooling. Okay. Huh. And what happened with a desert cooler in operation? When bring down the body temperature is in winter, when the temperature is much lower than 37 degrees, we start to savor a kind of exercise which produces heat, okay, and raises the body temperature. Plants, on the other hand, do not have such a mechanism to maintain internal temperature. Conform. An overwhelming majority, 99% of animals and nearly all plants, cannot maintain a constant internal environment. Their body temperature changes with the ambient temperature. In aquatic animals, the osmotic concentration of the body fluid change with that of the ambient air, water, and osmotic concentration. These animals and plants are simply conformer and the considering the benefit of a constant internal environment to the organism. We must ask why these conformers had to evolve to become regulators. Recall the humans analogy we used above. Much as they like how many people can really afford on an air conditioner, many simply sweat out and resign themselves to the suboptimal performance in hot summer months. Thermoregulation is energetically expensive for many organisms. This is particularly true for small animals like shrew and hummingbirds. Heat loss or heat gain is a function of surface area, and the since small animals have larger surface relatively their outside their volume, and they tend to lose body heat very fast when it is cold outside. Then they have expend much energy to generate body and heat through metabolism. This is the main reason why very small animals rarely found in the border region. During the course of evolution, the cost and the benefit of the maintenance a constant internal environment are taken consideration. Some species have evolved the ability to regulate, okay, but only over a limited range of environmental conditions beyond which they simply conform. If the stressful external conditions are localized or remain only for a short duration, the organism has two other alternatives for the survival. What is migrate? Migrate is what? The organism can move away temporarily from stressful habitat to more hospitable and area to return essential period over. And in humans analogy strategy is a likely like a person moving from a Delhi, okay, moving to moving from Delhi to Simla from the duration of summer. Many animals, particularly birds, during winter undertake long distance migration to a more hospitable area. Every winter, a famous Killardo National Park, Bharatpur in Rajasthan hosts thousands of migrating birds coming from the Siberia and extremely cold northern region. Sustained in bacteria, fungi, and lower plant, various kind of thick and the wall or the spores are the formed with the help to survive unfavorable condition. These germinate on the availability of suitable environment in higher plant, seed, and some vegetative reproductive structures serve as a mean to tide over period of stress beside helping in the dispersal. These germinate to the form and new plants under favorable moisture and temperature condition. They do so by the reducing their metabolic activity and going it into a state of dormancy. In animals, the organism, if the unable to migrate, might the avoid stress by escaping in time. The familiar case of bears going into a hibernation during winter is an example of escape in time. Some snails and fishes go into a estivation to avoid related problems heat, okay, and under unfavorable condition many zooplankton species in lakes ponds are interdependent a stage of development. What 13.1.3 adaptation? While considering the various alternatives available to organism for coping with organism. Now again, let's check what is adaptation. 13.1.3 adaptation. While the considering the various alternatives available to the organism for the coping with the extreme in their environment, we have seen that are able to respond through the certain physiological adjustment while the other do not do so behaviorally migration and the temperature temporarily to a less stress habitat. These responses are also actually their adaptation, so we can say that adaptation is any attribute of the organism, the morphological and the physiological and the behavioral, that enables the organism to survive and then reduce in its habitat. Many adaptations have evolved over a long evolutionary time and are genetically fixed in the absence of an external sources of water. The kangaroo rat in the Northern America desert is capable of meeting all its water requirement through its internal fat oxidation in which water is a byproduct. It also has ability to concentrate its urine so that minimal volume of water is used to remove excretory product. Many desert plants have a thick cuticle on their leaf surface and have their stomata arranged in deep pits sunken to minimize water loss and through the transpiration. They also have a special photosynthetic pathway cams, okay, that enable us their stomata to remain closed during day. Some desert plant like opuntia have no leaves. They are reduced to spine and photosynthesis function taken by the flattened stem. Okay. Now, mammals from the colder place genetically shorter ear limbs and the minimized to heat loss. These are called Allen's rule. In the polar seas, aquatic mammals like a sea level have a thick layer of fat blubber, ठीक है, below the skin that act as an insulator and reduce loss of body heat. Some organisms possess adaptation that are physiological, which allow them is to respond quickly to a stressful situation. If you had ever been any high altitude 3500-meter Rohtang pass near Manali and Leh, you have experienced what is altitude of sickness. Its symptoms include nausea and the fatigue and the heart's palpitation. This is because in the low atmospheric pressure of high altitude, okay, the body does not get enough oxygen but gradually get acclimatized acclimatized and stop experiencing altitude sickness. How did your body solve the problem? The body compensate low oxygen availability by the increasing red blood cell production, decreasing the binding affinity of globin by the increasing breathing rate. And the many tribes live in the high altitude Himalaya find out if they normally have a higher red blood cell count, the total number of homoglobin, okay, then than people living in the plains. In most animals, the metabolic reaction and the sense of all physiological function and the process optimally in narrow temperature range. In humans, it is 37-degree temperature, but there are microbes, archaebacteria that fluorized hot spring and deep hydrothermal vent and temperature for exceed 100 degrees Celsius. How it is possible? How fish thrive in Antarctica where temperature always below zero? How do manage prevent their body fluid in freezing from freezing? Okay, a, a large variety of marine invertebrate and fish live at depth in ocean pressure could less than 100 times the normal atmospheric temperature. Pressure that we experienced, how they live under a pressure, and do they have special enzymes? Organisms live in such extreme environment shows a fascinating array of biochemical adaptation. Some organisms show behavioral response to come up with variation with their environment. Desert lizard lack of physiological availability that mammals have to deal and with the high temperature of habitat, but to manage their body temperature and fairly constant by behavioral means. They bask in the sun and the absorbed heat, and when their temperature drop below the comfort zone, but move to shade when the ambient temperature and start increasing. Some species are capable burrowing into the soil hide and escape from the above ground. Population 3.2.1 Population and attributes. In nature, we rarely find the isolated and the single individual of any species. Major of them live in a group in a well-defined geographical area and share or complete for similar sources, potentially interbreed and thus contribute a population, although the term interbreeding implies sexually reproduction. A group of individuals resulting from an even asexual reproduction is also generally considered a population for the purpose of ecological study. All the what is that? I think I should zoom. Okay, now. Ha, genetically considered the population for the purpose of ecological study. All the cormorant in the wetland, rats in an abundant dwelling, teakwood trees in a forest track, bacteria in a culture rate, and lotus plant in a pond are some example of population. And in earlier chapter you have learned that although individuals organism is the one that has to cope and with a change environment. Okay, it is at the population level that natural selection to operate to evolve and desired traits. Population ecology is therefore an important area because links ecology to population genetics and evolution. A population has certain attribute whereas an individual organism does not, and the individual may have birth and death, and but population has birth rate and the death rate. And in a population this rate refers to a capita birth and death. The rate hence expressed are change in numbers increase or decrease with respect to population. Here is an example in the if a pond were 20 lotus last year. Okay, huh. And throughout production of 8 new plants are added, taking current 28, we calculate the birth rate is 8 by 20. Okay, 0.2 offspring per lotus year. If 4 individual in a laboratory population of fertilizer fruit flies dead during a specified time interval, say a week, the death rate in the population during the period is time interval. Okay, sorry, period is 4 by 40. It means 0.1 individual per fruit कहते नहीं fruit fly per week. Okay, हाँ. Another attribute characteristic of a population is a sex ratio. An individual is either a male or a female, but population has a sex ratio. 60% of population are female and 40% male. Okay. A population at any given time is composed of individuals of different ages. If age distribute percent of individuals of given age or age group is plotted for the population, resulting temp structure is called the age pyramid. Okay, for the human population the age pyramid is generally show age and distribution male and female in the diagram. The shape pyramid reflect the growth status of population. A, whether it is growing, B, stable, or third is declining. Yes, now this is the group where post rate has shown reproductive and pre, okay, expanding, stable, and declining. Now, the size of the population tell us a lot about its status in the habitat. Whatever ecological processes we wish to investigate in a population, be it in the come out and the competition with another species, the impact of predators or of effect of a pesticide application, we always evaluate them in the term of any changes in the population size. The size in nature could be low as less than 7 Siberian cranes at Bharatpur wetland in any year, or go into a millions chlamydomonas in a pond population size, and technically is called population density. Okay, designed as an end, need to necessarily be measured in number only, although total number is generally the most appropriate measure of population density. It is in some cases either meaningless or difficult to determine. In an area, if there are 200 carrots grasses, सॉरी ये गलती से किसी का कॉल आ गया था तो कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. हाँ, तो कहाँ थे? हाँ, तो यहाँ थे हम लोग. ऑल्दो द टोटल नंबर ऑफ no, although the total number is generally the most appropriate measure of population density, it is in some case either meaningful or difficult to determine. In an area, there are 200 carrot grass, okay, and the paranthemum hysterophus and the plants, but only a single huge banyan with a large canopy, okay, canopy या canopy कह सकते हो, stating that the populating density of banyan is low relative to that of carrot grass, amount to underestimating the enormous role of banyan in that community. In such case, percent or the biomass is a more meaningful measure of the population size. The total number is again not easily adaptable measure. If the population is used and the counting is impossible or very time consuming, if you have a dense laboratory culture of bacteria in petri dish, what is the best measure to report density? Sometimes for the certain ecological investigation there is no need to know the absolute population densities. Relative densities serves purpose the equally well. For the instance, the number of fish and the couch per trap is a good enough measure of its population density. In lakes, we are mostly obliged to estimate the population and indirectly without actually counting them or the seeing them. The tiger census in our national parks and the tiger reserves is often based on pug marks and the fecal pellet. 13.2.1 population growth. What is the size of population for any species is not a static parameter. It keeps changing with time and depending on the various factors including food and the availability, predators and the pressures and the adverse weather. In fact, it is these changes in population density and that give us idea of what is happening to the population, whether it is flourishing and declining. When whatever might be ultimate reason, the density of population in a given habitat during a given period fluctuate due to changes in a four basic processes, two of which natality or and immigration the contribute to an increased population and the density and the mortality immigration, okay. हाँ, नेटलिटी को इमिग्रेशन मतलब इमिग्रेशन में तो फ़र्क होता है, ओके. टू डिक्रीज natality, it refers to the number of births and the during a given period and the population are added to initially. Mortality, it is the number of death population when given to a time period. Immigration is the number of individuals same times when have to come to habitat and elsewhere during the time period of under a consideration. Immigration is the number of individual and population goes left habitat and elsewhere during the time period under a consideration. Now this is the figure, okay, you can note this natality and mortality. Upper is immigration and there is immigration, very important, and I think I should screenshot, take a screenshot, okay. Now let's find out next line. So if n is population of density at the time, then the density at the time is t plus 1 and then n plus 1 and the ni plus b plus I minus d plus I plus e, okay. You can see from the you can see from the above equation figure 13.5 and that population density will increase if the number of birth plus and the number of immigration b plus I is more than number of death and the plus the number of immigrant d plus e. The number condition birth death are most important factor influencing population density. The other two factor assuming importance on only under special condition. For instance, if a new habitat is just being colonized, immigration may contribute more significantly to population and growth that the birth rate. The growth models Okay, does the growth of population with time show any specific predictable patterns? We have been concerned about the unbridled human population growth and problems created by it our country, and therefore natural for us to be a curious if differential animal populations in nature behaves the same way or the show some restraint on growth. Perhaps we can learn a lesson or two from nature and on how to control population. Exponential growth. First is resources, food and spaces availability is obviously essential for the unimpeded of growth of a population. Ideally, when resources is in the habitat are unlimited, each species has to ability to realize the fully innate potential to grow the number. As Darwin, while the developing his theory of natural selection, then the population grow is in the exponential or or geometrical fashion. If in a population of size n and the birth rate not total number of but per capita are represent as b, and the death rate against the per capita death rate as d, and then increase or the decrease in n during a unit of time period, like dn by dt is equal to b minus d by b minus d into n, and let b minus d is equal to r, then dn by dt is equal to rn. Then the r is in the equation is called intrinsic rate of natural increases, and it is a very important parameter chosen for a assembling impact of any biotic or abiotic factor on population growth. To give you some idea about the magnitude of r value for this Norway rate, the r is 0.015, and for the floor beetle it is 0.12. In 1981, the R value for humans populations in India was 0.025, and the find out what the current value is. For the calculating, if you need to know the birth rate and the death rate. To above equation describe the exponential or the genetic or geometric growth pattern of population, figure 13.6, and the result in a J-shaped curve, and when we plot n in relation to time. If you are familiar basic calculus, and you can derive integral from the exponential growth equation as like nr is equal to n naught e pi rt. Okay, where nt is equal to population density after time, and n naught is equal to population density at zero, and r is equal to intrinsic rate of natural increases, and e is equal to the base of natural logarithmic. Okay, that value is 2.71828. Okay. Any species growing exponentially under ultimately resources condition can reach enormous population densities in a short time. Darwin showed every a slow growing animal like elephant could reach enormous number of but in the absence check. The following is an anecdote and the popularly narrate to demonstrate and the dramatically 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 how the fast a huge population could build up and when growing up exponentially. The king and the minister sat for a chess game. The king confident of winning game, but wait, winning game was ready to accept get hmm minister. The minister humbly said that if he won, he wanted only a somewhat grains, and the quantity of which is to be calculated by placing on the chess and board, and one grains is square of 1 and 2 of square, then 4 in square 3, then 8 in square 4, and so on the doubling each time the previous quantity of weight on the next square until of 64 square were filled. The king accepted seemingly silly bet and started the game and but But unluckily for him, the minister won and the king felt that fulfilling the minister. Bait was easy. It was so easy. He started with a single grains and first square and the proceed to fill the square following the minister suggested procedure, and but by the time he cut half chase and the king realized to his dismay that all the weight produced in his entire kingdom pulled together would still be inadequate to cover all 64 squares. Okay, and now think of teeny paramecium starting with a just individual and through a binary fission doubling in its number every day. Imagine that the what a mind begging population sees in a wood rich in 64 days. Provide food in the space remain unlimited. Logistic growth, no population of any species in nature at its disposal unlimited resources to permit exponential growth. This leads to a competitions between individuals for limited resource. In eventually the fittest individuals will survive and produce. The government of many countries have also realized in fact and that introduce various restraints with a view to limit human population growth, and in nature a given habitat has enough resources to support maximum possible and beyond which no further growth is possible. In the let us call this limited as the nature carrying capacity k for species in habitat. Okay, the population is in habitat with limited resources, so initially a lag phase but followed by phase acceleration and the deceleration, and finally an asymptote when the population density reaches the carry capacity, a plot of number in n in relation of t time, and the result in a sigmoid curve. The type of population growth is called vertical. What is this? Verhulust pedal logistic growth. This is a very important line of point of view of NEET examination. Figure 13.2, 13.6, and is described by the following equation: dn by dt is equal to rn k minus n by k, where n is the number of density at the time and r intrinsic rate of natural increases, k carrying capacity. Since resources for growth for most animal population are finite, become limited sooner or later. Logistic growth model is considered a more realistic one. Gathered from the government census data, the population figure from the last 100 years, plot them and check growth and pattern evident. 13.2.3 Life history variation. The population evolved to maximize their reproductive fitness are called Darwin fitness, high R value, in the habitat in which they live under particular set of selection pressure. Organism evolved towards the most efficient reproductive strategy. Some organisms breed only once in their lifetime, Pacific salmon fish and the bamboo, while other breeds many times during the lifetime. Most birds, mammals, and some produces a large number of small sized offspring. Oyster pelagic fishes, while the other produces a small number of large size offspring. Birds, mammals, so which is desirable for maximizing fitness. Ecologists suggest that the life is historical life कहते नहीं है लाइफ स्टोरी ट्रेट्स ऑफ ऑर्गेनिज्म हैव evolved in the relation to concentrates and imposed by abiotic and biotic component of the habitat which they live, and the evolution of life is traits in different species in currently and important area of research being conducted by ecologists. 13.2.3 Population interaction. Can you think of any natural habitat on the earth that is inhabited is just by a single species? There is no such habitats and such a situation, and even inconceivable incon बोलते हैं ना inconceivable for any species. Minimal requirement is one or more species on which it can feed. Even a plant species which makes on food cannot survive alone. It needs soil microbes to break down organic matter in soil and return the inorganic nutrients for absorption. And then how will the plant manage pollination without an animal agent? It is obvious that in nature animal, plants and microbes do not and cannot live in isolation but interaction in various ways to form biological community. Even a minimal community for many species linkage exist, although all may not be readily apparent. Interspecific interaction arises from the interaction for the population of two different species. They could be beneficial, detrimental, detrimental or neutral, neither harm or benefit to one of the species or both, assigning a plus sign for beneficial interaction and a minus sign for the detrimental and 0 for neutral interaction. Let us look at the possible outcomes and of interspecific interaction. Table 13.1 population. Okay, interaction. Species A एंड स्पेसिस बी एंड नंबर ऑफ नेम ऑफ इंट्रैक्शन. म्यूचुएशन में देखा जाए तो दोनों में ही पॉजिटिव है, यानी कि दोनों में ही दोनों में ही नॉर्मली देखा जाए तो बेनिफिट का ही बात हो रहा है ना, और क्या होगा. ओके, बेनिफिट का हो रहा है और इसमें डिटर्मिनेंट का हो रहा है. मतलब कहा जाए तो कॉम्पिटिशन के मामले में दोनों ही पीछे है. और प्रेडिक्शन का देखा जाए तो प्रेडिक्शन में क्या है, ए प्लस है और बी माइनस होगा. और पैराटिज्म में देखा जाए, पैरासिटिज्म में, तो इसमें ए प्लस है और बी माइनस है. और कॉमेंसलिज्म में देखा जाए तो ए प्लस है और बी ज़ीरो है. और एमेंसलिज्म में देखा जाए तो ये माइनस है और ये जीरो है. ओके, बोथ द स्पीसीज बेनिफिट इन mutualism and both lose in competition in their interaction with each other, and in both parasitism and predations only one species benefit, parasitic predators respectively, and interaction is detrimental to the other species, host and prey respectively. Interaction where one species is benefited and other is neither benefited or nor harmed is called commensalism. Amensalism, on the other hand, species are harmed and other is unaffected. Predation, parasitism and commensalism share common characteristics, and the interacting species live closely together. Predators. What would happen to all energy fixed by the autotrophic organism, and if the community has no animal to eat plants? You can think of predations as nature way of transferring to higher trophic level the energy fixed by the plant. When we think of predators and prey, the most probably it is tiger and deer that readily come to our mind. But a sparrow eating and any seed is no less predators. Although animals eating plant are categorized separatively as herbivorous, they are in broad ecological context and not very different from predators. Besides acting as conduct for energy transfer across trophic level, predators play other important role. They prey population under control, but for predators and the prey-specific could achieve very high population densities and cause ecosystem instability. When certain exotic species are introduced into a geographical area, they become invasive and start spreading fast. And because the invaded land does not have natural predators, the precursor pear cactus introduced into Australian is the nearly 1920s cause havoc by the spreading rapidly into million hectares rangeland. The finally invasive cactus brought under the control only after a cactus predators a month from its natural habitat was introduced into a country, and the biological control method adopted in agriculture pest control are based on the availability of the predators to regulate prey population, and the predators also help in the maintaining species diversity in community by reducing the diversity of competition and among the completing and the prey species in the rock in invertile दिख नहीं रहा एक मिनट sorry for that screen was blurred so हाँ तो हम लोग कहाँ पे थे यहाँ थे ना ये where was हाँ तो in rocky intertidal community of the American Pacific coast, the starfish piscator is an important predator. In a field experiment, when all the starfish were removed from the enclosed interdial area, more than 10 species invertebrate become extinct within a year because of interspecific competition. If a predator is too efficient and exploits and its prey, then the prey might becomes extinct, and the following the predators will also extinct of lack of food. And this is the reason why predators is in nature are prudent, and prey species have evolved various defense to lessen the impact predators. Some species of insect, frogs, and are cryptically colored and camouflaged to avoid being detected easily and by the predators. Some are poisonous. They are avoided by the predators. The monarch butterfly is highly digester distressful and its predator bird because of the special chemical present in its body and instinct and interestingly the bird and the acquires this chemical during the caterpillar stage by the feeding of poisonous food. For the plant, herbivores are the predators, and nearly 25% of all insects are known as fly phytogaphers. Okay, 25% क्या बोलते हैं phytogaphers and feeding on the plant sap and other parts of plant. The problem is particularly served for plants because unlike animals they cannot run away from predators, and the plants therefore have evolved an astonishing variety of morphological and chemical defense against herbivores. Thorns, acacia, and cactus are the most common morphological means of defense, and the many plants produce stored chemicals and make herbivores sick, and when they eaten in inhibited feeding of or digestion disrupt is a reproduction of or even kill it. You have seen the weed Calotropis growing in abundant field, and the plant produces highly poisonous cardiac glycosides, and it this is why because this is why you never see uh, any cattle or gate browsing on the this plant. A wide variety of chemical substance that we extract from the plant or the commercial scale, nicotine, caffeine, quinine, citrulline, and optimum etc are the produced by the actually as a defense against grazer browser the competition. When Darwin spoke the struggle of existence and survival of the fittest in nature, he was convinced that inter-specific competition is a potent force of organic evolution. It is generally believed that the competition occurs when closely that related species and the complete and the कहते नहीं है and the compete for the species resources they are limiting, but it is not entirely true. Firstly, a total unrelated species could also compete for the same resources. For the instance, in some shallow South American lakes, and visiting flamingos and resident fishes competes for their common food zooplankton in the lake, and the secondly resources need to be limiting for competing to occur in interference competition. The feeding efficient of one species might be reduced due to the interfering and inhibitory presence of the other species, even if resources, foods, and species are abundant. Therefore, competition is the best defined as the process which is the fitness of one species and measured in the terms of its R is the intrinsic rate of increases and is significantly lower in the presence of another species, and it is relatively easy to demonstrate and it in laboratory experiment as Gauss and the other experimental ecologists did. When the resources are limited, the competitively superior and the species will eventually eliminate. Okay, with the other species, but evidence for such competitive conclusion and occurring in nature is not only a conclusive strong and the persuasive, and the circumstantial and evidential does not exist. However, in some case the ambiguum tortoise is Galapagos and island become extinct within a decade after goat were introduced on a land, and apparently due to a greater browsing efficiency of the goats. Another evidence for the occurrence of competition in nature comes from what is called competitive relation. Okay, and a species whose distribution and is restricted to a small geographical area because of the presence of the competitively and superior species, and is to found expand its distribution range dramatically when the competent species is experimentally removed, and the Connell's elegant field experience showed that one on the rocky sea coast of Scotland and the larger and competitively superior Berkeley and the Bolanus and dominate the in, intertidal area, and they exclude the smaller Bernice and the Cathamelus from that zone. In general, herbivores and the plant appear to be more adversely affected by the competition than the carnivores. Gauss competition explosion principles state too closely relate the species competing for the same resources cannot be coexist indefinitely, and the competitively inferior one will be eliminated eventually, and this may be true and of if resources are limiting but not otherwise. More recent studies do not support such a gross generalization about the competition. While they do not rule out the occurrence of interspecific competition in nature, they point out specific facing competition might evolve mechanisms that promote coexistence rather than conclusion exclusion. One such as mechanism and is resources partitioning, and if two species competitions compete for the same resources, they could avoid and competition by choosing and for the instance different times of the feeding or different foraging pattern. And the Mark Arthur showed that the five closely species of warblers living on the same tree were avoid competition and coexist due to behavioral differentiation in their foraging activities. Parasitism what? Considering that the parasitic mode of mode of life ensure breed logging and the males. It is not surprising that the parasitism has evolved so many taxonomic groups from the plants to higher vertebrae. Many parasitic have evolved evolved to the host specific. They can parasitize only a single species of host. In such way, both host and parasite tend co-evolve. That is that is and if he host evolved special mechanism for rejection or resistant the parasite has evolved mechanism to counteract, okay, and neutralize them terms in other to be successful with the same host species in accordance with their life cycle. Parasitic evolved special adaptations such as loss of unnecessary sense organ, presence of adhesive organ of or sucker or to climb on the host, and loss of digestive system and high reproductive capacity. And the life cycle of parasitic are often complex, involving one or two interdependent intermediate host or vectors to facilitate parasitization or primary host. The human liver flux flux and the trim, trematode parasite depend on two intermediate host. A snail and a fish complete its life cycle, and the malaria parasite need a vector mosquito to spread to the other host, and majority of parasite harms the host, and they may reduce the survival growth and the reproduction of the host and reduce its population density. They might render the host more vulnerable to the produce by the making it physically weak. And do you believe that an in ideal parasitic should be able to thrive within a host without harming it? They Why didn't natural selection lead to the evolution of such totally harmful parasite? Okay, parasite and parasite that feed on the internal surface of the host organism are called ectoparasite. And the most familiar example of this group is called lice on humans, and ticks on uh, dogs, and marine fishes are infected ectoparasite copland and cascota, such a parasitic that and is commonly found in growing and the hedge plants, has lots chlorophyll and the lives in the course of evolution. It derives its natural from the host and which is parasitic, and the female mosquito is not considerable a parasite, although it needs our blood for reproduction. And can you explain why it contracts? Endoparasite are the are those that live inside the host and the body at the different site: liver, kidney, lungs, and red blood cell, etc. They like the life cycle of endoparasite are more complex because their extreme specialization and the morphological anatomical feature are greatly simplified, emphasizing and produce potential brood parasitism. Birds is fascinating example of parasitism, in the which parasitic birds lay egg in the nest of host and lets host and the incubates and them. During the course of evolution, the eggs of the parasitic have evolved resemble the host egg in the size and the color to reduce a change of birds and defecting the foreign eggs and the ejecting them from the nest, and they try to follow the movement of cuckoo and the quail and the crow in the neighborhood and the park during the breeding season, spring to summer. Okay, and watch the brood parasitism in action. Next is commensalism. What is commensalism? Just a wait. Commensalism. What is commensalism? This is the interaction in which one species benefit and other is not benefit, and an orchid growing as if epiphyte on mango branch. The barnacles grow on the back of a whale benefited, or while neither mango tree nor whale derived from a parental benefit. The cattle, great grazing cattle in the close association and site you are we are most likely to catch you live in farmed rural areas. In a classical example of commensalism, and the regrets always foraged close to where cattle of grazing, because the cattle as the move stayed up and the flush out insect from the vegetation, and that otherwise might be difficult for the egrets and to find the catch. And another example of commensalism in the interaction, okay, and between the anom that has stinging tentacles and the claws and parasitism that lives among them, and the fish gets protection from the predators which they stay from stingly tentacles, and the enemy does not appears to derive the benefit and by the hosting clownfish. Mutualism क्या होता है? This is the interaction conference benefits on the both interaction species, and the lichens represent an intimate and mutualized relationship between the fungus and the photosynthesis algae on the or cryos or cyanobacteria. Similarly, mycorrhiza are the associate between the fungi and the roots higher of plants, and the fungi help the plant in the absorption of essential nutrients from the soil, while the plant in the terms of provide fungi and with the energy yielding carbohydrate. The most spectacular and the even evolutionary fascinating example of mutualism are found in plant relationship. Plants need with the help of plant pollinating their example and disappearing their seeds, and animals obviously have to be paid and the fees to services that plants expect from them, and the plant offer rewards from fees in the form of pollens and the nectar pollinators and juicy and nutritious fruits from the seeds disappears. But the mutually beneficial systems should be safeguarded and against cheaters. For example, animals that try to steal nectar and without adding the pollination. And now you can see why the animal interaction often co-evolution of the mutualism. That is, evolution of the flower is pollination. Eggs are tightly linked to with the another. In species of fig trees, there is a tight one to relationship with pollinators. Species of wasp, it means that a great species can be pollinators by the partners wasp and species, and no species female. The female wasp uses by the fruits and not as a oviposition leg laying or the egg, but uses and the developing seeds within the fruits for the nourishing, okay, for nourishing its larva. The wasp pollinates the big inflorescence while the searching for the suitable egg laying, and it returns for the flavor pollination. The fig offers the wasp some of the its developing seeds as food for the developing wasp larvae. Orchid show a building and the diversity of floral pattern, many of which have evolved to attract right pollinators, insect bees and bumbles and ensures guarantee pollination by it. Not figure 13.8. Not at all orchid offered rewards. The Mediterranean orchid and the offers employs sex date sex decade and get pollinators done by a species of bee. One petal its flower bears an uncanny resemble to the female of bees in size, color and marking. The male is attracted to what perceived as a female, and the pseudocopulate with the flower, and during that processes as is dusted with the pollen from the flower. When the same pseudo pseudocopulates with another flowers, it transferred pollen and it does pollen is thus pollinates the flower. Here you can see how the evolution operation if the female bee color and changes and even slightly if any for any reason during the evolution pollinator successful be reduced and you unless the orchid so evolved maintain assemble and petal to female bees. The last is summary. Let's check a summary. Summary is a very important thing that can visualize in very shortly any chapter. Okay. What if- As a branch of biology, ecology is the study of relationship of living organisms, abiotic physiochemical factor, and the biocomponent other species of their environment. It is concerned with four level of biological component: population, communities, and the temperature, light, water, and soil are the most important factor for the of the environment to which organisms are adapted in various ways. Maintenance of a constant internal environment homeostasis by the organism contribute a optional performance, but only some organism regulators are capable for the homeostasis in the face of changing external environment. Okay. Either partially regulated the internal environment simply conformed a few other species have evolved adaptation to avoid unfavorable condition in species migration or in the time estivation hibernation and the disputes. The evolutionary changes through the natural selection takes place at the population and level at and the hence population ecology is an important area of ecology and the population is a group of individual in of a given species sharing or competing or for similar resources in a defined geographical area. Population have attribute that individuals organisms do not birth rate and deaths and the sex ratio and age distribution. The the proportion of the different groups of male and the female of in a population often represent graphically age pyramid. Its shape predictates and its shape indicate and the whether population is stationary or growing up or decline. Ecological efficient effects of any factor of on an a population are generally reflected in the size population generally which may be expressed in the different ways the number of biomass percent and cover etc depending on the species population grow through the birds and the immigration and the decline through death and immigration. When resources are unlimited, the growth is usually exponential, but resources become progressively limiting. The growth pattern turns logistic, and in the either case, growth is ultimately limited by the carrying capability of the environment, and the intrinsic rate of natural increases are is measured inherited potential of a population to grow in natural population of of different species do not live in isolation but interaction in many way depending on outcomes these interaction between two species classified competition both species suffer predators and parasitism one benefit another suffer and the commentalism one benefit other unaffected and amenalism one harmed and another unaffected. Okay, and predators is a very important process through through which is trophic energy transfer is facilitated and some predators help in the controlling their predators population plant have evolved diverse morphological and the chemical defenses against the herbivory in competition it is perfumed that superior and eliminate the interferier one the competition inclusion principle but the many closely related species have evolved variation mechanism which facilitate their coexistence and some of the most fascinating case of mutuation in the nature are in are seen in the plant pollinators interaction. thanks for the guys watching video till the end, and you are a part of journey, so please like and subscribe and more share. Bye bye.